Welcome to the Wave Strength. Innovative pension solutions for a secure retirement. Presented by Pacific Life.
All right, everybody, thank you for joining us on another exciting episode of the Wave Strength podcast. I'm your host, Jim Breen. I'm a marketing director with Pacific Life's institutional division. And with me today as our guest is Kristin Brooks. Kristin is also with Pacific Life, and we've been excited to have her on and looking forward to this. So Kristin, thanks for joining us on today's episode.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it being here.
Absolutely. And Kristin, before we get started in today's topic, maybe you can just tell our audience, our listeners, about your background and what you do here at Pacific Life.
Sure, Jim. So I've been with Pacific Life for, almost 14 years in May. I'm a sales associate with the pension solutions team, and I help facilitate the onboarding process from start to finish with our pension risk transfers from defined plans. And more recently, I've begun working a little bit more closer with our commitment to the defined contribution space, and that's what brings us here today.
Awesome. Yeah, it does. And such an important topic, and really a major focus for Pacific Life's institutional division. And for those who may not be aware, Pacific Life just about 2 years ago created a separate division, a new division, this institutional division with a focus on pension solutions, stable value wrap, and a couple others, but really a heavy focus on DCLI, or defined contribution lifetime income solutions. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. So Kristin, maybe you can set the stage about today's topic and why it is so important.
Sure. Discussions around defined contribution lifetime has really picked up over the last several years, and we want to be a part of that growing and evolving market. And we're making strides to introduce our commitment to the defined contribution space to both our new and existing clients. So, Jim, it came down to this: how can we effectively come up with solutions to meet the needs that people need while they're planning for their retirement if we don't know what to solve for? So we wanted to better understand our own employees' needs while planning for their future. And we want every Pacific Life employee to feel confident and financially secure while they're enjoying retirement, whether that's traveling the world or picking up a hobby like guitar lessons. We understand there's an opportunity to provide more innovative solutions or education to better meet the needs and obstacles that many people are facing right now while they're planning for retirement.
Yeah, and kind of like a hearts and minds approach, really understanding the person holistically, like where are they going, and what can we do to assist them along the way?
Exactly. So we took the opportunity to dive deeper with our own employees to get their thoughts about what they're planning for retirement thus far, what guaranteed lifetime income can mean for them. Jim, do you know how long you're going to live for? When do you think you're going to die?
Oh boy. Oh my gosh. Well, if you ask me at about 6 a.m. when I'm being pummeled in the head with a Hot Wheel from my sons waking me up, maybe a couple hours. But as you know, as I move through the day, I get a little more optimistic. But it is. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, and it's impossible to say. And with folks. Historically, folks are living longer, and there are many more opportunities for us to live healthier lives. We can have a deeper understanding about what it takes to really put ourselves in a best foot forward as it relates to our health and our surroundings, mental health, and our work habits, etc. And it's really a moving target for everybody, even though we know that the age is getting longer. People are living longer.
Absolutely. And the reality of it is really no one knows exactly when they're going to die, right? Mm-hmm. There's a chance that we could live longer, but why wouldn't we want guaranteed income to support us well beyond our years when we're in our 80s, 90s, or if we almost reach 100 like Betty White? You might be lucky
almost,
like her.
I know, days away. What a champion. I mean, yeah. And we have a lot of, I know we have a lot of Golden Girls fans, those in our audience. We have a lot of Golden Girls fans. So yeah, shout out to Betty White and the rest of those.
May she rest in peace.
May she rest in peace indeed. So Kristin, people are living longer. It is a moving target. We don't know when we're going to pass. And so, there's a lot of ambiguity out there. And this hearts and minds approach, I think the Pacific Life is looking towards, and a lot of the work that you did, this empathy work, there was a deep need for that data to connect with people.
Mhm.
And so when you went down that road to try and learn more, to find out how you connect with people, you chose, instead of to, look outside, you and the team decided to look inside within our four walls of Pacific Life, right? So walk me through that. Walk our listeners through that process, Kristin, of maybe the decision point when you decided, let's actually look inside our company to see what the data points will be, and maybe walk me through that process.
Yeah, so we decided to dive deeper in-house first because we saw the traffic and the in-plan options that we had with our own employees, and the fact that there wasn't a lot of traction and a lot of pickup from the employees upon reaching retirement with our own solutions. We thought, we probably should stop and talk to our own peers first before we try to go out to the market and convince others that we have solutions that are out there that would meet their needs. So we decided to dive deeper with our own employees. We started the empathy interviews. As you stated, we partnered with our innovation specialist to kind of help with felicitating those interviews. He did a fantastic job with garnering responses from the Pacific Life employees that we interviewed. And we were able to start that process by soliciting a survey completed by the employees. And that really helped garner the interest around this topic, because we were really surprised about how many employees that were really interested in starting this conversation with us. We had about 65 plus employees from across the organization that wanted to share their experience with us from retirement planning. And we even had an opportunity to talk to 3 recent retirees to kind of hear from them and gather what their insights and feedback is for this process.
Oh, wonderful. And I think it was surprising in a lot of that data to hear where people were in their journey, right? I mean, were you surprised at all with any of the feedback that you received?
To be honest, no, I wasn't surprised, because
Okay.
I'm doing my own research myself.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I know that the tools and the resources could be better. And so that is what we're trying to discover. That's what we're trying to find. And so we found that there is a lot of interest out there. It's just that the resources and the tools aren't there. So we're trying to do a deeper dive internally to try to find out exactly what it is that people need. What is it going to take for us to be able to effectively communicate and educate on the solutions that are out there upon retirement? So we have a lot of work to do, but I definitely feel us listening to our own employees will definitely set the standard for when we go out to the market.
Okay, so walk us through maybe the criteria that you use to kind of assess or gather the groupings of people, and maybe the conversations that were had with our HR team ahead of these empathy interviews.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jim. So we definitely met a lot and partnered a lot with our HR team, and really trying to find exactly what approach we wanted to take, because we didn't want to go out there and say, hey, look what we have. We really wanted to take the approach of what exactly do you need? And so we partnered with HR to really kind of critique and refine the questions that we were going out with, so that we could strategically plan how we were going to follow up with them. So yeah, working with our HR team was fantastic. They were very, very supportive. Sarah Henderson and Ashton did a great job with helping.
Shout out to Sarah and Ashton.
Yeah, did a great job guiding us through this process, making sure that we went about it in the way of having our peers, the Pacific Life employees, in mind, in their best interest.
Can I interrupt you for a moment here? So,
sure.
I'm sure we have folks that might be listening to this thinking, well, boy, how did you reach out to your HR team? Was this just in a quick meeting, or was there any kind of planning? How was it received from the HR team? Maybe you can give a little bit of background on that, and maybe explain those initial conversations.
Yeah, so HR was on board from the very beginning.
Yeah.
When we first brought it up to them, letting them know that our DCLI strategy wanted to start in-house first, they were super excited. They also know that there is an opportunity out there to provide better education to our employees and really draw attention to some of the benefits and incentives that Pacific Life employees have. So they were super excited to get on board with us starting in-house, because it's really a partnership. We're really partnering with them, because a lot of things that we have to solve for, we're going to have to work directly with them. So we wanted to start those conversations upfront immediately. And it was great that they were on board with it.
I think partnership is a great word to use, because in the meetings that I was able to sit in on, that really was the feeling. It was a true partnership. And I think that's an important part, an important recipe in the larger meal. That needs to really be there at the onset, because without that, it does make things a little more challenging. But we really did have that solid partnership with our HR folks and the business partners in that area of the company.
And Jim, it's not going to stop. That partnership continues. It's going to continue as we are continuing to have these conversations, both internally and externally. It's going to continue as we develop our solutions, because HR knows the employee population, right? They know closely what our needs are and what we would like to see. So partnering with them to have them get on board is going to be a great start.
So, you got the sign off, you partnered with HR, they were willing to work with us. How did those empathy interviews, how were they conducted? We're in a global pandemic, and this was now we're currently in Q1 of 2022, but we're looking back in I think it was like Q2 that these happened in 2021. Was that when it happened?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we were even in a more unknown area of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
So how did all this happen?
Well, I think about this experience, and I think about how awesome it would have been to really conduct them in person, face to face. But as you mentioned, Jim, we're in different times right now. So we're having to adapt and innovate to what we're working with right now. And thankfully, technology allowed us to continue business as usual. So we conducted those interviews virtually over Zoom. And we had a lot of in-person interaction with the help of our camera. So that helped.
The help of the good old camera. Absolutely.
The good old camera.
Good old camera. And you mentioned earlier the innovation specialists. We actually have a Hatch Labs or an innovations lab that is committed to these types of projects. Maybe you can, illustrate that group for us a little bit, Kristin.
Yeah. So the innovation specialists that we worked with in particular started from helping us putting together the survey and the right questions to garner the interest from the organization itself. So it started right there with that partnership. Again, another partnership. And then also helping with facilitating the interviews as well, coming up with the questions, being able to pick up on when the interviewee that we were speaking with made a great point that we needed to elaborate on. Just the guidance with the facilitation of these interviews was phenomenal. And we're excited to say that they're going to be willing to help us continue with those interviews as we get interest from our clients in the market. So I'm excited that we were able to start at home with our own employees as the guinea pigs, so to speak, and see how that can be transferred out to our external partners and offering that assistance as well.
That's a great explanation, and wonderful. You hear our audience hears that word partnership a lot, and I think this is a credit to the division that we are working in right now, this institutional division, where we do have that deep emphasis on innovation and that push to think differently and to really look at the landscape and find ways that we can bring change. And as you mentioned, there are those significant detours and roadblocks that we have had over the last 19 months or so during the global pandemic. But I think this is a great example of that innovation. Speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about design thinking. And that is something that we've talked about in other podcasts where we've talked with, if you go back to our podcast with Jim Legeman from the Hatch Labs team, he does talk about design thinking. So I encourage folks to go back and listen to that podcast, maybe for a deeper dive into what design thinking is, or the design thinking approach. But our innovations team, they're big on this design thinking approach. So how did you use that design thinking to get the information, make those respondents feel comfortable, and ultimately have a successful Q&A?
Yeah, so the design thinking process played a huge part in this overall project, and the empathy interviews was just a small part of it in the research. So, as I stated, we had asked a wide range of questions from where they were thinking about retirement, what their goals were, even if they even considered guaranteed lifetime income. And we were able to even include educational pieces of it during the interview so that we can garner their reactions that will help with development of our marketing materials. And so it really wasn't the questions that we were asking during the time of the interview. We were really trying to listen to what the employees were saying to us, because ultimately what we were hearing, we would take that back as part of the design thinking process and synthesize and identify key themes of what we heard. And so we were able to create 3 distinct personas based upon what we heard. And we were able to create those personas using that design thinking process. So it was a complete elaborate review of all of the interviews that we did and all of the notes that we collected to really hone in on these 3 key distinct personas.
That's interesting. And I mean, can you go into those 3 personas? Would you mind?
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, great.
Yeah. So the 3 personas, I mean, it was very clear. And we noticed immediately when we started talking to folks was it's really 2-sided with this process. It's financial and emotionally driven. You know, people have saved up for 35, 40 years, you know, for them to build their life savings to help meet the income needs during their retirement. So we really captured some good quotes. We captured really some good ideas of where people were at. So there were 3 different distinct personas, like I mentioned, that we immediately rose up to the top. The first one, the first person, they were really ready to retire early. They were 15 plus years from retirement, very ambitious. They really were confident with their retirement planning, but they wanted more centralized and comprehensive tools. So that's what it boiled down to for that person. Yeah. So that was number 1. So the second person was an early saver. They're a little bit closer to retirement. I would say they're about 10 years away from retirement. They want to retire at the normal retirement age, but they need more guidance. They want that help. They want to be told that they're doing the right thing, and they want a better understanding of what the solutions are out there. So we learned that particular persona kind of met the majority of people and where they're at. And the fact that they know that they need to be doing something, they just need the guidance and want to know exactly what direction that they need to take.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And that's we find that's a big part of the market right there. That oh no, I'm 10 years out. What I need to jump into this quickly. And now probably the third persona is even closer to that. 5 years out.
You got it. The third persona is close to the finish line. You know, they started, and the good thing is they started prepping early. That's what we heard. They started prepping early,
that's good.
But they still wanted that roadmap. They still wanted that roadmap to know that what they're doing was right. And so again, with all 3 personas, even though they're at different stages with their retirement planning and different stages with their confidence, they still need resources. They still need the tools to kind of help guide them to make the right decisions.
Oh, that's interesting, Kristin. And so looking at those 3 personas, then after the fact, you know, what's the overall conclusion? You know, what did that yield? What did it bring in terms of next steps?
Great question, Jim. You know, it boils down to this, that no one size fits all, right? We're going to have to come up with solutions that meets the needs of everyone, no matter where they're at in their retirement planning. And so I feel like we got a great opportunity to hear firsthand internally, because what we're hearing internally, I'm sure is going to mirror exactly what we hear from our clients and their plan participants. The fact that we were able to start those conversations internally is going to help us to better be able to find the right solutions once we go out to the market and start talking to our external clients.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a you know, another great example. We use the word partnership a lot in this episode, but really a great example of Pacific Life's commitment to these participants, right? And our division being able to really have that clear hearts and minds approach One of the unique things about Pacific Life, maybe folks don't know, in our 150 years of history, it's complete with so much of that strength and stability, but also too, because we are a mutually held company, we have that mutuality. We really truly can be focusing on our participants, on our policyholders, and this is one of those examples of how Pacific Life works very hard. In this case, a hearts and minds approach to really understand on a deep level, how can we help? What can we do to serve these customers in a way that meets them where they are?
Right, exactly. And I'll tell you what, Jim, some of the things that we heard from our own employees really set the stage that the need is out there. People are willing to go get a part-time job or move in with their kids. And I'm the next person that loves my parents to death, but I'm not sure I want them moving back in with me after all that free time in retirement.
I'm right there with you. Mom and Dad, I love you, but stay away. No, I'm just kidding. I love my mom and dad so much, but I know what you mean. I mean, and plus too, some parents, they don't want to be a burden on their kids, right? A lot of those parents say, yeah, I don't want to be a burden on my kids. And you come up with that situation where you may very well, and this is a whole other conversation, but the scenario where you obviously you have enough, but you don't know if you're going to outlive your money. And that's a whole other conversation for another time. But Kristin, this has been very enlightening. And I hope our audience, our listeners, were able to, connect and understand not only what you've been working so hard to do with the team, working with HR, working with these respondents within the company, but truly connecting and finding ways to connect to the hearts and minds of folks that are nearing retirement.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And our hope is that, partnering with our own HR, partnering with our plan sponsors to help really identify what do the plan participants need. We really have to start there before we can start to solve for what they may need during their retirement. So like I said, we've repeated it quite a bit. It's a partnership, and that's something that Pacific Life is willing to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for joining us, for being with us, for taking time out of your busy day to talk to our audience. And we'd love to have you back.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thanks for having me. I would love to be back.
Awesome. Okay, great. And to our listeners, thank you so much again for joining us on another episode of the Wave Strength podcast. I want to encourage you to please subscribe and like our content. And if you are interested in more of this content, head over to either Spotify, Audible, or even YouTube, where you can watch our Wave Strength webinars. Again, my name's Jim Breen, and thank you for joining us on another episode.
This has been another episode of The Wave Strength, presented by Pacific Life. Don't forget to catch us on YouTube and make sure to subscribe. Although this podcast is presented by Pacific Life, the opinions and views expressed are those of the hosts and participants and do not necessarily reflect Pacific Life's views on any of the topics discussed. Pacific Life is a product provider. It is not a fiduciary and therefore does not give advice or make recommendations regarding insurance or investment products. Pacific Life, its affiliates, its distributors, and respective representatives do not provide any employer-sponsored qualified plan administrative services or impartial advice about investments, and do not act in a fiduciary capacity for any plan. Pacific Life refers to Pacific Life Insurance Company, Newport Beach, California, and its affiliates, including Pacific Life and Annuity Company. Insurance products are issued by Pacific Life Insurance Company in all states except New York, and in all states by Pacific Life and Annuity Company. Product availability and features may vary by state. Each insurance company is solely responsible for the financial obligations accruing under the products it issues. This podcast was recorded on January 28th, 2022.